For my capstone project, I've decided to create a curriculum. I have worked for the past 7 years at Etiwanda High School. Etiwanda High School is located in Rancho Cucamonga. It is part of the Chaffee Joint Union High School District. Our school is one of the largest schools. We have over 3,600 students enrolled this year, where 51% of them are Hispanic, 19 are white, 17.5 are African American, 5.1 are Filipino, 5.2 Asian, and 2.2 are identified as other. Our school serves a fairly middle-class socioeconomic base, with 33% identified as qualified for free and reduced lunch. Over the last couple of years, there has been an increase in the percentage of students receiving free and reduced lunch. Also, we have had an increase of Hispanic enrollment. My curriculum project is a brand new project. I've decided to create it based on students' needs for the beginning of second semester. This is all for my Spanish 2 classes. The problem that we've noticed this school year has been that our students are very low academically. Instead of teaching Spanish 2, we're actually teaching Spanish 1.5. As the year progresses, there has been a lack of motivation, lack of engagement, and there's minimal understanding of concepts. Things that they should have known from Spanish 1, they don't recall. Therefore, it is hard to teach the new concepts for Spanish 2. Sometimes our students are discouraged because they don't understand. Therefore, they don't pay attention. Therefore, they don't do any of the work. I wanted to create a curriculum where I can increase that motivation and increase the engagement. I surveyed 103 students. I asked them 5 questions. One of them was, do you prefer using the textbook or different applications to learn Spanish? What applications do you think benefit you? Quizlet, Conjuguemos, Kahoot, PhSchool, or any others you might use. As a teacher, what can I do to increase your understanding and the concepts we learn in Spanish? What changes do you want me to make when teaching a new concept? And do you like the games we play in class? Why or why not? Um, all the time, I find it difficult to create engagement opportunities for the students because Spanish 2, there's a lot of grammar. My students decided that Kahoot and Quizlet were the best applications to learn Spanish. Before the beginning of second semester, we had only used Quizlet once, and we had used Kahoot twice. But for this chapter, I've decided to integrate it a lot more. 70 of the students actually submitted the survey, and they said that they did not want to use a textbook at all. They wanted hands-on activities, they wanted to use more technology, and they wanted it to be interactive. Based on what I have described about my class, I think that my current way of teaching has not benefited all of the learners. And as we've read with Cudney and Etzel, it is important to include all types of learners, and the way to do it is by providing a variety of instructional tools to accommodate the student's individual learning preference and encourage motivation. Finding new and innovative ways of teaching will help to engage and motivate students, at the same time increase academic achievement. Like I mentioned, Spanish 2 is a lot of grammar, therefore I always find it challenging to find time to all these extra activities. For this project though, I actually took the time to integrate these activities. My research question is, will integrating applications when teaching vocabulary and grammar improve student understanding? My sub-questions: what improvements in student engagement are made with these integrations? And do these integrations better serve females or males in the classroom? First of all, based on my literature review, we have to understand what are the two different types of motivators. We have the intrinsic motivation and the extrinsic motivation. The intrinsic motivation refers to a student's fascination with a subject, the perceived relevance of the topic, a sense of accomplishment with understanding the concept. We have students that are intrinsically motivated, but only about 20% of the class. Extrinsic motivators include expectations from role models and grades. I think the students in this case, we have a lot more percentages. Learners feel motivated when up-to-date and authentic materials are used to support learning. And when they have teachers who incorporate aspects of technology to scaffold their learning through the use of contextual cues such as images, icons, audio, and video elements. Based on the literature, I want to make sure that I integrate all of these different aspects of technology to help with their understanding. Not using some type of classroom technology, online assignment submission, online dictionaries, target language, text websites, audio video clips is essentially unthinkable for the 21st century language instructors. The use of technology in the classroom can increase motivation, decrease anxiety, foster more student-centered activities, provide students with authentic materials and audiences, promote greater language production, and a high level of language sophistication. The use of technology reduces the anxiety because the students are actually working one-on-one. They have their Chromebook, they're going at their own pace. Nobody's pressuring them to answer the question. If they answer it incorrectly, they can try again until they answer correctly. Therefore, it reduces that anxiety they feel when they have to speak in a different language. Giving students additional tools to learn a language benefits them in different ways. Not only does it give them opportunities to choose how they will learn vocabulary and grammar, but it also increases their motivation. Motivation is a significant factor within education because it encourages students to produce meaningful work and cultivate a desire for lifelong learning. Students hold a positive learning attitude toward using computers and multimedia and learning vocabulary because they can have full autonomy and control the pace of their learning, like I have mentioned already. Using the different applications, I would assign it one day and give them 2 or 3 days to finish. We would do some work in class, other at home. Therefore, they have plenty of time to complete it and did not feel rushed. Vocabulary learning via technology enables learners to be exposed to repetition of vocabulary, which is believed to be more effective than mass repetition. If you're not familiar with Quizlet, for example, Quizlet has different activities or games that they can do with the vocabulary. They have flashcards, they have matching games. They have what's called Learn, where they're learning the word in Spanish and in English. They get to hear it, they get to write it, they get to spell it. Therefore, there's a lot of repetition for the same thing. Applications like Quizlet and Kahoot create a positive impact on student motivation, engagement, and achievement in the classroom. And there are many other benefits mentioned to the use of technology. Students are more engaged, speaking more regularly, having more fun. More students are sticking with language instruction for longer periods of time, and they're learning more in that time than they used to. They are learning faster, grades are higher, and it's helping with true proficiency. I actually agree with Fernandez. Students are engaged. They are working harder for some reason. The grades tend to increase, and they are learning the concepts. For my curriculum, I decided to do this on one of the chapters in our textbook. The big idea is using applications to master vocabulary and grammar. The objective for this chapter is students will communicate about shopping, clothing, and fashion, talk about the past using the preterite of regular verbs, point out specific objects using demonstrative adjectives, and compare things without repeating adjectives. The preterite of verbs is speaking in the past tense in Spanish. For example, I used to. I created 12 lessons. The first lesson, a ver si recuerdas, is actually a review lesson where we review vocab from Spanish 1. Lesson number 2, cardinal numbers, is also a review lesson from Spanish 1. It's using the numbers, learning how to say the numbers in Spanish, learn how to say them and learn how to write them. Lesson number 3, a ver si recuerdas en cardinal numbers. That was actually the quiz given to them. Buscando una ganga, looking for a bargain, is introducing the new vocabulary for the chapter. Lesson number 5, they received a number of review vocab quiz. Lesson number 6, manos a la obra. And lesson number 7, manos a la obra. Those is actually doing activities where they are practicing the new vocabulary. Lesson number 8 and lesson number 9 are teaching the preterite and practicing. The preterite, like I mentioned, is the past tense. Lesson number 10, el pretérito and complemento directo, that's the preterite tense and direct object pronoun. Lesson 11 is the preterite and using adjectives as nouns. And lesson number 12 is their chapter test. I only included 12 lessons, but I actually created 20 lessons for this chapter. Instead of 2 weeks that I usually take in a chapter, it took me a whole month, but the results were amazing. For lesson number 1, a ver si recuerdas, we went over the vocabulary that they had previously learned. I gave them their vocabulary list with new vocabulary and their old vocabulary. For the old vocabulary, they needed to write the translation in English to see how much they actually remembered. During this class, I showed a PowerPoint presentation where I reviewed all of that vocabulary. After we did the PowerPoint presentation, we went over the vocabulary they had to translate to make sure they had the correct translations. And then we played Kahoot. So this is a competitive game where they have questions to ensure that they know the correct answer. And this was only with the review of the vocabulary. It did not have any of the new vocab. For lesson number 2, I gave them notes on numbers and I showed them a PowerPoint while they actually had a page that they had to fill in the blanks using those PowerPoints. After we finished taking the notes, we played a review game that I call Mata Moscas. And this game, they have to go up to the slide. I have different pictures and I say a word and they have to slap it with a fly swatter. They're playing against another person. Therefore, whoever slaps it first gets the point. And whoever wins the game gets extra credit. After we played this, we did several activities on phschool.com. phschool.com is a website where they have additional activities to practice what they learn. They had to make sure they received 90% or better. If they did not receive 90% in these activities, they had to redo them until they received that 90%. While I was walking around, I observed many students redoing them, and some of them were very engaged. They had the vocabulary out, they were asking questions. Other students automatically received 100%, so they moved on to the next one. For lesson number 3, a ver si recuerdas in the cardinal numbers, it was a review of the previously learned vocabulary and the numbers. We played bingo during this day. After that, we actually played a game called Yo Tengo Quien Tiene with the numbers. After we played that game, we reviewed by playing Mata Moscas game again. And then we finished up with just going over the PowerPoint with the visuals. For lesson 4, Buscando una ganga, this is where I introduced the new vocabulary, and I introduced the new vocabulary again with a brand new PowerPoint. But before introducing the vocabulary, we play Matamoscas again with the old vocab. In order to introduce the new vocabulary, students have to read Buscando una ganga, looking for a bargain, where four kids are going around town and they're looking for a place to shop. They read in groups, then we read out loud. After we read out loud and I ask them questions in the target language, they have to answer questions uh, based on this reading, and they answer the questions in their groups. Lesson number 5, number and review vocab quiz. Um, this was a quiz that integrated the cardinal numbers and it integrated the previously learned vocabulary from Spanish 1. Before actually taking the quiz, we played a game. And then after that, they took the quiz. After they took the quiz, I assigned a Quizlet for the new chapter and they started learning the new chapter vocab. For lesson 6, Manos a la Obra, I start doing activities using the new vocabulary. So first of all, I put a PowerPoint presentation again. I go over the vocabulary, make sure students are learning. The first 2 days, I say the words in Spanish and they say them in English. And once I know they've become more proficient, then I switch it around. I say the word in English and they have to say it in Spanish. During this day, instead of doing book work, we actually went to phschool.com again and did 4 activities about the vocabulary, the new vocabulary. After we did those activities, students had about 20 minutes to go into Quizlet and work on their flashcards for this brand new vocab. The last 5 minutes of class, I hand out homework, and the homework was to actually color where they had to match the vocabulary, the English word with the Spanish word. For lesson 7, we continue practicing the new vocabulary. For this one, again, I go over the PowerPoint at the beginning of class. Students respond in the target language. We do activity 3 on phschool.com. After we finish the phschool.com activity, we play a Kahoot game to make sure they are learning this new vocabulary. And the last 10 minutes of class, they start a new activity in Quizlet. For lesson number 8, this is where I start teaching them the preterite tense. Just like I did with the cardinal numbers, I show them a PowerPoint presentation. They take notes by filling in the blanks. After we're done taking notes, they get to watch 2 YouTube videos that goes over the exact same thing I just taught. And then after that, they actually have a homework assignment. I pass it out, I go over it, and then they get 5 minutes in class to start working. For lesson number 9, it's still going over the preterite tense. And like I mentioned before, the preterite tense is the past tense. At the beginning of class, again, I go over the vocabulary, ensure they are still studying the vocabulary. After that, I have a speaking activity where they have to talk with a partner. Once they finish their speaking activity, we go over their homework assignment. After their homework assignment, we do an activity called Pancho Camacho, where I have students in the front of the room with visuals, and they have to say a sentence within 30 seconds, and whoever doesn't say it in that time is out. The last person standing is the one that wins. After we played Pancho Camacho, we actually went to phschool.com and did activity number 1 and activity number 2 for the preterite tense. The last 15 minutes of class, students work on their brand new Quizlet that now includes the preterite tense and not just the vocabulary like the other one did. For lesson 10, we continue practicing the preterite, but now we are including the direct object pronoun. I give them notes the first 25 minutes of class. They same structure. They have the paper. They fill in the notes. I show a PowerPoint presentation. Um, we play a Kahoot game that goes over the preterite tense only. After we're done with the Kahoot, they do an activity on phschool.com for demonstrative adjectives. Then they have a homework assignment where they have to translate sentences using the direct object pronoun and the preterite tense. For lesson number 11, we continue with the preterite tense and using adjectives as nouns. Um, in this lesson, I go over homework at the beginning of class. After that, I give them the notes. Once we're done with the notes, using the PowerPoint, we actually do a PH School activity for the demonstrative adjectives. Once they're done with that, they get to work on their Quizlet, which they have to do two assignments, which is spell and test, and they have to do that for the rest of the period. Lesson 12 is where they have their test. I included this lesson as lesson 12, but they did not have the test until lesson number 20. I actually removed some of the lessons where they actually did workbook stuff. They really didn't use the computer or they used other hands-on activities. For this lesson, they have a fill in the blank test. It also includes a listening portion. It includes a free response and it includes a true and false. The way I implemented this, like I said, it was 20 lessons. I only included 12 lessons. This has been the longest I've taken to complete a chapter. I always take 2 weeks. I took a month. It was worth it. My students were so happy. They're, Señora, can you continue doing this and going this slow? And of course, I said I couldn't take a whole month because we had to get to a certain chapter. Of course, there's a lot of room for improvement in my curriculum. I can include many other applications that I've learned since I've done this project. I went to a Chromebook training and they actually gave us 4 or 5 different applications that we can integrate into our lessons. At first, I had a difficult time getting used to the idea of not going over every single activity with my students and writing out on the board. They were actually independently working on their own. They had their resources. If they had questions, they raised their hand. All I had to do was walk around, make sure they were working and answering some of the questions. It was very minimal. Everybody was engaged, but at the same time, I was worried that maybe they might not be learning. There was 100% engagement, even for students that hardly ever did anything. Um, when they took the quiz, students actually pass the quiz and the test for this chapter. I usually have 3 or 4 students that fail a chapter test or even a quiz, and they didn't for this one. I had a girl that she always receives D's, and she says, Senora, I actually learned and understood. It takes a lot of time to integrate so many technology into this, but it's worth it. If I had the time, I would do it every day. Based on my observation and the grades, the girls benefited more from the lessons than the boys. I really don't understand why, but that's what happened. Limitations, I really had minimal limitations. Time was one of them, that I couldn't spend too many days on certain concepts and had to move on and teach new concepts. I could have probably taught this chapter for a whole another week. Sometimes the internet would not work, so I had to change the lesson and give them either a worksheet, a translation, or we played any games I had in class. Those days are the ones I actually removed from the lessons. Actually wanted to see the impact integrating technology would have in student academic achievement, engagement, and retention of information. It is important to collaborate and share best practices for student engagement and academic achievement. Therefore, I did this curriculum. I wanted to know what worked, what didn't work, and then share it with my colleagues because I know that they have the same issue in their classes. For this chapter, I changed so much, and since then, I've continued to integrate so many applications. I have not used my textbook since December. The students love the fact that they don't have to bring it to class, and they also like it that everything is interactive. They can always go back and do something if they didn't understand it. They can try as many times until they get that 90 or 100%. Doing this project has been very beneficial, and I'm glad I was part of this course. Thank you for watching my presentation.